When we returned to South Africa in 2019, after 3 years in the UK, the one thing I missed a lot was the British television. Having been there for 3 years, being exposed to stuff that many people in South Africa don't see is really it's something that you leave behind, and you actually lose it. But one of the great advantages of recent times is that we have had the launch of BritBox here in South Africa on the 6th of August. And one of the featured programs that is now starting to be well picked up is called Manhunt 2. On Manhunt 2, the sorry, Martin, apologies. I've got a blooming guy coming on my iPhone here. Uh, Manhunt 2 is all about a detective chief inspector, Colin Sutton, and he's played by Martin Clunes, who's one of the best known British actors. We'll get into other parts of his career in a moment. But Martin, reading the British media, many of them are saying that it's the best yet, your best work yet. How do you feel about that suggestion?
I think they need to revisit some of my earlier work, which was also very good. But I'll take anything, you know. It is a part. It is a part that I've loved playing, and I sort of from the first one I liked being Colin. And I have to say, it's really helpful to me having a real person or something. You know, you always look for something to act rather than just reciting your lines. And to have Colin in my mind and being Colin, I've thoroughly enjoyed being that decent man. And it sort of felt quite easy the second time around, just to get in that groove, if you know what I mean.
How much time do you spend researching, i.e., how much time would you spend with Colin Sutton before Series 1 and now Series 2?
Just hung out with him, went out to the first time I met him, we went out to dinner, and I think I upset Mark, the director, by saying, do you mind, because I'd never met Mark at that dinner, I just wanted to get a good look at Colin and sort of drink him in, if you know what I mean. And that was really helpful. And also he's terrific company and a great raconteur. But then the next sort of really helpful thing was learning how to operate within a rank system, if you know what I mean, to see how one officer relates to another officer, and if that officer says something to this officer, how it reverberates within the rank. And I know the other actors who played the other members of the police force really appreciated having Colin, and of course they're playing real people too. So a lot of them were calling their real subjects, and also Colin was very helpful about how he viewed them.
Now, from a South African perspective, we don't really understand the English accents that well, but it appears as though there's a very distinctive accent that DCI Sutton has. Was it hard to learn it? I know you're an actor from a long family of actors, and we'll talk about that later. But is it difficult to pick up those accents?
I'd say Colin spoke in what's in snobby terms referred to as an estuary accent, which is sort of around the Thames sort of area, or maybe South London. And I grew up in South London, and I went to school in South London. I actually went to school in the area where the Night Stalker was operating in Shirley. So I suppose, yes, it's funny you're not the first person to have said I was using an accent that I didn't sort of think I was, if you know what I mean. I think some of the Americans thought I was using a Cockney accent, but they're probably basing that on Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins. So.
Interesting looking at pictures of Colin Sutton and yourself. I see you have the same glasses, at least, although the hairstyle's a little different.
They're not actually the same glasses, but from experimenting with glasses, they're the glasses that made me look more like Colin than glasses that actually are identical to Colin's, funnily enough. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't doing a Gary Oldman full makeup prosthetic version of Colin. I was doing my version of Colin.
Are we then to look forward to almost a Poirot kind of series here? We've had Series 1. The second series it's brilliant. It really is. South Africans are so in for a treat, having not seen Series 1 or now Series 2. surely there would be other great cases that he would have worked on.
Well, we're desperately trying to sort of. I mean, I have to say, it's always funny to me when people refer to it as Series 1 and Series 2, like it is a kind of ongoing, returning drama. Because to my mind, I think of them as the cases. And maybe I'm too much Colin on this, but it's like the first was a series about that case, and this was a series about the next case. So they don't seem like a continuation, although obviously it's the same. It's the same guy. We're looking. Colin's looking at other cases. Of course, he worked on other cases in a very long and distinguished career. And this sounds really bad, they don't all lend themselves to dramatization. That sounds really bad when you're talking about crimes like these, but that's the truth.
What does he think of the Night Stalker series now that he's presumably seen it?
Oh, he's really pleased. Really pleased. I mean, he's been involved right from the start. It's all based on his memoir, and Ed Whitmore, the writer, and he have a good working relationship. But I think he's he turns up on set quite a lot, comes to have a look, and he's always tickled by the efforts of the art department, who are brilliant, in what they've recreated. In terms of how a police station looked. I think we're all very familiar with fictitious police stations, if you like, where the look is everything rather than it looking like what it really looked like. But we've always been at pains with these programs to keep them as kind of accurate as we can.
And what did you learn from everything that you went through here?
I learned to appreciate the police force, who are coming under an awful amount of scrutiny at the moment. But I did learn. Mark Evans, the director, and I on the first one we went and we hung out with Hampshire Serious Crime Squad, just to see again with the rank thing how the senior investigating officer operates with his teammates, and just the amount of work that goes into stopping people doing terrible things to each other, is so impressive. They do so much, and it's so thankless. And I think they seem to get held up and take knocks. And there's been some terrible stuff. There's always going to be terrible people in all industries.
Just going behind the scenes, because BizNews obviously is very focused on business. It's interesting to notice that you work closely with your wife of almost how long? Nearly a quarter century?
Next year is 25 years, yes. Yes.
When I watched the series, The Night Stalker, Colin Sutton and his wife spoke a lot at home about, and in fact, she helped him to nail down the criminal. Your wife is involved in your production, certainly in this production, and with Doc Martin earlier. Do you take work home?
Not really. Not really, because we're a partnership in other senses as well. We have a daughter, that's part of our program, and we own the company, and so there's that's a form of partnership, and I think we're pretty good at not talking about the work things outside of work hours, especially lately when Philippa has been working so much on Zoom calls like this. I think she gets a bit brain fried, so the last thing she needs to hear is me and my silly questions.
But how do you work together? I mean, I work with my wife, and I understand the equal partnership and the benefits that both parties bring. But it's something that is not often explored. Steve Jobs, a great example. When you read the Walter Isaacson biography of him, he was getting married to Laureen and post getting married, and he was a pretty crummy guy until he married his wife. I'm not suggesting you were a crummy guy, because clearly you had a great career before then. But how do you guys? How does that partnership work for the many people who do work as with spouses?
Well, in this respect, it works really well because neither of us do the same job. So there's no, vying or competition there. And I'm very lucky. I bimble through life, and things have come along. I've not actually ever been that ambitious beyond just wanting to stay busy and keep this as my job, the thing that I do that pays for everything. But Philippa keeps putting these things in my way that challenge me as a professional, as an actor, that I wouldn't necessarily do myself. I mean, for years, if you have any success on TV, someone will ask you to play some kind of detective. If you get audiences coming back to your stuff, and I'm just not interested in those TV detective things. But this was different because it seemed to me more it was a study of a man and a job as much as anything else, which is why I'm sort of slightly puzzled by the idea of what's the next series going to be like, because there may well not be one, because we just sort of visited these 2 episodes in Colin's life. But and I knew she was developing this with Ed, because we did a thing, I don't know if you got that in South Africa, called Arthur and George, which was a Julian Barnes book about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which we made with the same writer, Ed. And I knew that she and Ed were doing something about this interesting policeman, but I'd sort of left them to it. And then I said, can I have a look? And the more she told me about the man, the more I sort of got interested. And I said, can I play that? And she said, yes.
You have mentioned a couple of times of acting, and I was interested to see that it runs in the family. Your late father and your grandfather being actors as well. Were you kind of made to be an actor?
I mean, my dad died when I was 8, so I wasn't, my career path wasn't fully formed in my head. But I think when I was little and people said, and what are you going to be when you grow up? I just kind of said actor, because there was a vacancy for that role in our family, if you like. But and then again, I kind of wandered in. I was very young when I went to drama school. I was 16. I wasn't a great student at school, and I wasn't that engaged with any of that. But I went to drama school, where I was a bit younger than most of the people there, and quite annoying. And then I was out as a professional actor at the age of 18. Not really thinking about it much.
And comedy, Men Behaving Badly is I mean, it's comedy, whereas Doc Martin is not exactly comedy, and now you're even further away from the genre.
Yeah, well, I mean, I never, it wasn't a conscious effort to work in comedy. I was just funny looking, I think. That's why I ended up there. I did a lot before Men Behaving Badly. I'd done 2 other sitcoms, sort of more domestic ones, and bits of sketch stuff and everything, but always alongside, little roles in TV dramas, or I worked in the theatre a fair bit. So I always thought there was more of a balance, but obviously Men Behaving Badly was really successful over here, and that's where people learnt what my name is.
Born in Wimbledon, which is maybe the centre of South African expats in the UK. Have you? Indeed it is. Yes, it's southwest, along the southwest line. If you don't hear Afrikaans being spoken, well, then you're on the wrong train.
There was we lived in Putney for a while, and that's nearby. And there was a big South African deli, where you could get some gazelle for the braai.
Uh-huh. And I think there are 2 South African shops at the Wimbledon station now. So even competition. But have you been here? Have you been to this part of the world?
Yeah, a few times. I directed a car commercial in Cape Town, and I went to Amboseli Game Reserve up near Port Elizabeth, I think. Is that right? Yeah. It was an amazing thing. A guy called Adrian Gardner. So he bought all these ranches. I used to be involved with a wildlife charity, and do you remember that poor girl who was murdered, Julie Ward? And there was a terrible thing. But they opened this Julie Ward Centre for big cats that had been rescued and weren't able to support themselves in the wild, but they were in camps within the wild, if you know what I mean. They were in the right environment.
Now, Adrian is a legendary figure here in South Africa, brought back the whole wildlife to the Eastern Cape. So certainly a very well-known name here. But it was interesting to me as well to see that you farm in Dorset. and that most of your documentaries, or it appears so anyway, are related to animals. So you've got a connection there.
Yes, I do. Yes, yeah, yeah. I like animals. I share my life. We've got 4 dogs, 2 cats. How many horses have we got at home? We got a load of horses. I've got a pair of Clydesdales. The weather's just turned here. It's sort of wet and windy, and I just led him in from the field. He was sort of bouncing around quite sideways. One of them.
What do you farm?
At the moment, we've been through. We've had some cattle in the past. We've just got a handful of those guys left. We were up to 300 sheep at one point. I got rid of those. They just want to die for a pastime. But we have what I call guest sheep. We have other people put their sheep on our grass, and we make hay and haylage in smaller bales for the equestrian community.
And living in Dorset, was that part of being close to doing the Doc Martin series in Cornwall?
We already had a place down here. We just ages ago just sort of fell in love with the county, and then had a fun time, a fun sort of 2 years looking for a house to buy, and then we just after we married about 25 years ago, I guess, we bought our first house down here, and we just sort of have weekends. And then when Emily was born, and it became time for her to go to school, we sort of realized that if we didn't move down here lock, stock and barrel, we'd never get down here, because if her school was in London, then her friends would be, and you know what it's like when you have children, when you graduate from being a waiter to a chauffeur, don't you, at some point? So we just we moved everything down here and have never looked back. And she had a lovely lovely country schooling, and now she's a novice event rider, and she's got a big competition coming up this weekend. But yeah, so she's pretty animal based too.
That's something else that's quite big in South Africa, is event riding. Maybe you'll bring the family out here to let Emily participate. Doc Martin, the final series was supposed to, I think it was supposed to come out. We're supposed to be watching it now, but presumably COVID played havoc with that.
Yeah, it would have been impossible in that little village to film with the COVID restrictions as they were last year. But we're all we're girding our loins for next year. Yeah.
Are you about to shoot that final?
We'll shoot that next year, from the spring through to the summer, and then it'll be out this time next year.
Okay, and how long does it take in that post-production? Do you get involved in that, or?
Not really. I don't have a lot to offer it. The post, I don't know. Well, because we're shooting for such a long time, they're kind of, the first few episodes are picture locked by the time we're shooting the last one, if you know what I mean. So we have the editors in porter cabins down on a farmyard. It's all it's quite rustic, our outfit down in Cornwall. All our principal interior sets are built in a grain barn, and that's our sort of studio. And on the same farmyard in a holiday cottage, that's where our office is. And then in the farmyard itself, there's porter cabins where they edit, and we store the costumes and props and things.
Well, there are many South Africans who are going to go to Port Isaac as a result of that. And before we close off, you're very recognizable in the UK with the success of Doc Martin, and I'm sure now with Manhunt. Has it changed your life much? When you go out and just do things normally?
Not around here, no. They're over me around here. No, I think I've been around long enough that I'm never a novelty. People don't get excited. It's him again. Certainly around here, but we're pretty isolated where we live here, so it doesn't really, there's no knocking on my door. But no, I live what I consider to be a normal life.
And when you travel?
When I travel, people say hello. They're generally friendly so far.
So next year you turn 60. I guess
this year.
Is it this year?
Next month.
Next month. Apologies, yeah. November. It's in acting. Does that mean that you move to the next phase? I remember reading once that 20 to 40 was supposed to be learning, 40 to 60 was supposed to be earning, and 60 onwards was supposed to be serving.
Well, I don't know. I'll just carry on. I'm not. I'm not looking forward. Well, I mean, I can't stop it, can I? It's going to come, but I'm slightly begrudging it.
Have you got any other ideas into the future, or was Philippa, your wife, Philippa Braithwaite, working on that for you?
Yes, no, we have a project that we're going to do. Well, first, I was doing a thing about the islands of the Pacific when COVID struck, and we only got 3 of the 4 films we were going to make that are going to air here, I think, in the new year now. But we were waiting to see if the world would open up and we could make the 4th film, but it didn't, and we couldn't. I mean, a lot of the Pacific Islands are still closed. Tonga is, I think, and Fiji. But we hope to get there at the end when we finish Doc Martin. I'll get out there, and we're going to not just do the 4th film, but we're going to make another 3 using that as the first one of sort of the Islands of the Pacific Part 2, which I'm looking forward to. And then we're making another drama about drug dealing in Wales.
Yeah, it's been very tough on your industry, COVID.
In some ways, but in other ways, with the, Amazon and Netflix did really well out of COVID, and they're injecting. I know they're upping their production in England by another 25%, I think, and I guess Amazon will do the same. So those, there's more being made than ever before. It's really hard to get hold of a crew.
That's interesting. And does it also mean that your potential employers have changed from ITV and the BBC to Amazon Netflix?
I don't know. I'm still very fortunate in that we have a great working relationship with ITV. So while it's still there, plus as you say, I'm 60 next month. They want young, fresh meat on Netflix and Amazon, I think. Not that old guard.
And Hollywood, has it ever beckoned?
I'm not. I don't live there, so I do. I've had a couple of sort of inquiries, but they all want you to, relocate, and I don't want to do that.
Martin, good seeing you. I hope we see you in South Africa again in the not too distant future.
Oh, I'd love to, Alec. I'd love to come back. Yeah, I'd love to.
And all the best of luck with Manhunt. The rave reviews in the UK suggest there's going to be big demand for a follow-up.
We'll see. Well, I hope you guys all enjoy it over there.